Pianotek is pleased to announce another new tool that we've been working with Bill Spurlock on, and we'll be manufacturing and distributing his Hammer Tapering Jig. It's been out for a number of years. It's an excellent tool. We've used it also here in our shop. This tool lets you put the taper hammer as well as even make a hammer narrower, take a standard available hammer width and be able to adapt it to some varieties where you have a very thin, let's say, base hammer. So you can do two things. You can cut a hammer straight and just cut it narrower, or you can use it in the tapering setup. That's on this. This has an adjustable gauge to go into your miter slot here on your table saw, and it is adjustable. So with different table saws, the miter slot may be in different locations relative to the saw. You can easily loosen the knurled nuts, move this. Actually, you would first put the hammer actually in the jig. Okay, and we have it flat in the jig. And what we're trying to do is just get it to initially just kiss the edge of the blade, come along the felt, and going through the molding. By the way, the saw is unplugged at this point. Good thing to do. But that is adjustable depending on where the miter slot is. So once you've done that, you can also quickly check for squareness on either side. And if you're always using the same saw, your setup can really remain the same. And that's what we do here too. We've got there are two screws here, the Phillips screws, that adjust the in and out, or the angle where we would bring the hammer in and out here. You could start with it at flush. We have these screws backed out a little, so if we want to do very wide hammers, we have room to go in without changing this adjustment. And then by basically kicking the tail out, by having this screw out more than this, you kick the tail of your hammer out so that when you pass it through the table saw, you create a nice straight cut. The advantage in using a table saw blade rather than a belt or disc sander is you get no smearing of the underfelt color there, and you have a very smooth finish that you can't get with a sander. Spurlock tapering jig, the initial setup will be first of all to make the hammer flush to the jig, and then we are also, when we put the hammer in, there's a screw in the back which lets you adjust the hammer in and out, and that's so that you can be grabbing a good solid portion of the molding on top, not being in the scallop or anything. So we bring that in here. You can position it, let's see here, so that the cam, this is an eccentric cam, this cam is putting pressure right on the molding, the flat part of the molding. And this screw lets you move the hammer back and forth to contact, make good contact there. Now, once you've done that, firm pressure, the cam will lock the hammer in. And you want to check it by pulling the hammer. You see that you got a good solid fit in there. And you got to feel for how much pressure you need to put, because you probably aren't going to be checking each hammer with the saw blade spinning. You don't want to be pulling towards a blade, but the initial setup and to see how well it's gripping, you can do a quick test there. Once that's done, we have this so that it just touches the blade. We have the blade up high enough to go about 1/4 of an inch higher than the widest beam of the hammer, as you can see there. And you don't have to go any higher, you just got more exposed blade. So once we've done that, now we want to put the taper on one side. So what we'll be doing is kicking the tail out And a good start is usually half a hole, 1 1/4. Let's see, 1 1/4 turns, which is approximately 1.5 millimeters. So once that's done, we'll be pulling about 1.5 millimeters off the one side. I can't show you without cutting it, but it'll go in here, peel off 1.5 millimeters. And you would go through the entire set. Obviously, you've already, the hammers have been bored at this point, and that's all. So once you've bored them, then, or you can, we have a lot of customers that have us bore the hammers for them, and then they do their own tapering, because you can experiment with removing weight. This way, when you start cutting felt, that's the way to remove the most weight off of a hammer, by reducing width. Now, we set this up, a lot of times if we don't want to change the width of the top of the hammer where it contacts the string, we can set the blade up so you're just starting to skim or cut the felt just below the top, which on the bass and tenor hammers will be relieving a lot of felt, hence a lot of weight. And so you can, with extra hammers, do trial and error, weigh them if you're trying to match something existing, or achieve a weight that's desirable for that action. Okay, now that we've tapered one side of the hammer's entire set, we can now set it up to cut the other side. Set the first taper to end up pulling about 1.5 millimeters off the bottom of the tail, and if it was an 11 millimeter wide hammer, you took off 1.5 millimeters off of each side, you'll end up with an 8 millimeter tail, which is pretty standard for the bottom of the hammer. So this is really the same procedure as we did the first time to go from a flush setup to kicking the tail out 1.5 millimeters, and we used the 1 1/4 revolution of the screw to do that. So we're just going to do that again. We're going to remove the hammer. Again, we'll be doing obviously the other side of the hammer throughout the set. So we'll again go to this adjustment screw, turn it out 1/2, a whole, plus 1/4, and put the hammer in again, lock it, and go through and cut the final side, going out throughout. Now, one of the things you should look at is when you're going from bass to tenor, or if you're coming through the treble area, you're going to the bass section, you want to check again that the high point of the cam, where it's gripping, is set in the middle, the working area, and you want to, and you can adjust the screw in the back for the difference in the length of the bass hammers and the tenor hammer. Really, that's the only adjustment. Now, one of the things, if you use typically the same type of grand hammers, always good to keep any extras, scrap hammers you have, and the width you're going to use and the length, because you will want to attempt this on some scrap hammers first to see if you're getting the width you want at the tail, and to make sure you're starting your cut where you want to. So that's it's always good to have that. But that's it. Once you've done the tapering, now the hammer's been bored before, and you've done your taper to adjust for clearance and to try to duplicate the weight or achieve a weight that action is going to be more comfortable lifting.